Nope. We're redoing that intro. Forget it. Greetings, people on the other side of the internet. I'm the One Cut, and this is a video kind of expressing my gratitude and thanks to the YouTube community out there, specifically the car repair and car enthusiast community. And it goes into how I got into car repair through this community out there, and it's all thanks to you guys. So thank you very much. So some of the channels that helped me along in my journey in particular have been like Scotty Kilmer, Chris Fix, Eric the Car Guy, the Car Passion Channel, Engineering Explained, Car Throttle Junkyard Digs, Dylan McCool, Rob Dom, how do you say his last name? Or whatever. The Corvette Ben, Ronald Finger, and B is for Builds. Special thanks and shout out to you guys. Now back to the other recording with Scotty Kilmer, Chris Fix, Eric the Car Guy, Ratchets and Wrenches, the Car Passion Channel. But those particular 5 have been a pretty core part of me developing this passion for working on cars. So to give you more background, I've been working on computers since probably at least high school, maybe if not sooner. It's something I just love doing. I'm very hands-on. I like fixing things myself. Anything that's hands-on, I do. And if I don't know how, I look it up, I learn how to do it. But at one point in my life, it was not till a couple years after I graduated high school that I bought my first car. It was $500 from a friend, and the engine ran fine at the time. But the issue was that whenever you turned the wheel to make a turn, the entire car would clunk around and then shift over, and you shift back when you straighten out the wheel, and it was really bad. And my friend, when he sold it to me, he said, "Oh, it just needs the struts replaced, the shocks." You know. I said, "Oh, okay, no problem." So I bought the car from him, and my other friend said, "Yeah, that's the other issue," and I trust that other friend more. So I was like, "Oh, okay, that must be the issue." So I called different mechanics places to get pricing, and I dropped off the car at night. I left a note with the key, basically said, "Hey, you said you can replace the struts on these, please replace the struts, that's all that needs to be done, and we're good." They finish it, I go to pick up the car, and I walk in, and the receptionist eventually is like, oh yeah, we got the car, it's all good, it's all fixed, we replaced it. I don't know why you wanted us to replace the struts. The old ones worked fine, there's nothing wrong with them, but hey, we replaced them anyways, so here's your bill. And at that moment, I felt totally stupid. So it hit me at that moment that I knew nothing about cars. I felt really stupid, paid the guy and left. I go back to the car, it still has the same clunking issue. And I was very disappointed that I decided to trust my friends and believe them over just asking the mechanic, hey, what's wrong with the car? Or even figuring it out for myself. So I forgot to add, they did call me to ask me about why I wanted to replace the struts, but unfortunately my voicemail wasn't working at that time, and I didn't get that voicemail until way afterwards. So they did try to contact me about that, just to make that clear. I decided I didn't want to feel that way again, and that I was going to learn all I can about cars. So I started looking at videos online. And the main channel I went to was Scotty Kilmer, and I learned so much from his videos. I've watched hours upon days, maybe even weeks worth of his videos, especially at the beginning, just learning all I can about cars, and it was great. I started out with fixing small things. The rear view mirror fell down, kept falling down, so I fixed that. Like small things like the side view mirror one day fell off, just the mirror piece, and it was gone on the highway. So I replaced that, and small things like that. And it wasn't really anything big, but it was like introducing me to the fact that, hey, I can actually fix cars. It's not this foreign concept. One day I decided, well, I'm having trouble with the blinker switch. I've always had this trouble with the blinker switch where I have to hold the wheel a certain way in order to turn on the switch so that it doesn't blink fast, even though both light bulbs work. So I thought, well, let's figure it out. So I did a whole bunch of research online. I watched so many YouTube videos. I bought a tool to pull the steering wheel out. I bought the new blinker switch piece that goes into the steering column. Took apart the steering column, put in the new switch, and the blinker switch works properly. It wasn't just the blinker switch that was broken though. Since they were connected to the taillights actually weren't functioning correctly. I don't know how it passed state inspection that way, but it did. So once I replaced it, everything worked again. It was great. I felt really accomplished about that. And so I drove that car for maybe 2 or 3 years, I think. I'm not sure. By the end of it, I decided, well, I'm tired of it clunking around every time I turn. Might as well take it to the mechanic shop and see what they have to say. Because I kept looking up online, I thought, well, maybe it's the steering rack, but it doesn't quite sound like it's the steering rack. I'm kind of comparing my situation to all these how to fix videos that Scotty Kilmer, Chris Vicks, and Eric Car Guy, and how to fix their car. And none of them matched my situation. So I'm like, well, I'll take it to the mechanic. They'll be able to tell. So I take it back to the mechanic and ask them, hey, is this clunking issue? What's wrong? So it takes them maybe a day to look at it. So they said, yeah, we found the problem. And I went to pick up the car, and the guy said, I don't know if your car is going to drive out over a lot and the engine's going to fall out, or if it's going to drive for 500 miles and then the engine's going to drop out, or if the engine's ever going to drop out. But that engine's going to drop out, essentially. So what they were telling me was the K-frame, or the subframe of the car, that's part that holds the engine into the car. The bushings for it were completely shot. I didn't know what bushings were at the time, so I was like, the bushings, huh? He said, yeah, so every time you turn, the entire subframe shifts over and clunks around and actually damaged the subframe. So I drove it home, didn't really drive it that often from then on. Still drove it every once in a while when I needed to. Decided to go back to school. Started attending Wake Tech Community College and studying for information system security degree, which later turned into cybersecurity degree. It's an associate's degree. I'm still working on right now. I'm getting pretty close to getting it, actually. I needed a car to go to college, right? So I started looking around, and Scotty Kilmer is into Toyotas, right? He's like really drives down that Toyotas are reliable. I wanted a reliable car, and so I decided I wanted a Toyota. So I started looking around. I spent 2 complete full days looking for a car. And when I say 2 full days, I mean from the time I woke up to the time I went back to sleep. I was looking for the car that I wanted. And I made spreadsheets, I made lists, I started crossing things out, I started figuring out what kind of car I'm looking for, what are the price ranges for these different cars, what are the reliability of these cars, what are the common faults, how do I fix these faults how can I fix these faults if they're a common one if I decide to buy this car. And my dad's trying to help me out. He says, well, you really should probably look at more than just Toyotas, because I'm limiting my search to one brand and it's not going so well. Then I saw the Miatas and I was like, ooh. And I looked at the Then I looked up their reputation and found that they're really solid cars, and they're kind of cheap, and they are fun, and I can get one with a manual transmission. He took me out in his car and taught me manual transmission. I've only driven it maybe once or twice. He has a Dodge Dart. I wanted to learn more, so I wanted to have my own manual transmission car. So I was like, well, it'd be a fun little car with a manual transmission. So I added Miata still in my spreadsheet list. And one day I decided, well, I'm going to go out and look at these cars. So at this point in the video, I started explaining the story of how I got the Miata. It's not really fitting for this video here, but there are some things about like I couldn't really afford it, and some financial stuff that popped up, or I didn't really know how to drive a manual transmission. My experience at the dealership for the first time, So yeah, I mean, if you want to hear the story, just mention to it in the comments below, and I'll make a separate video for it. First sight, fell in love. I wanted that car. I sit in it, I drop the top, like, yeah, this is kind of cool. And he's like, you want to take it for a test drive? So I tried going 5th gear, and it's not going in 5th gear. But I walked out of the dealership, owning a car. The car I wanted. Now, I wasn't confident enough to drive the car all the way home. My parents took it home. Once we get back, my dad says, "Hey, it's a 6-speed." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I was driving 70 miles an hour at 4,000 RPM the entire way back, and I'm fiddling around here. 6-speed. Oh, it's a 6-speed. Cool. Even better. I didn't know that. That's why I couldn't get into the 5th gear." So I was like, okay. And then I learned how to drive a manual transmission on that car. The Miata has been a big part of my learning process of cars. The first things I did to it were small things, granted. I cleaned and waxed it consistently. I was very proud of the car. I loved it. It was beautiful. And it is. I still love it. It's a little less beautiful, but it's awesome. So one of the main issues it had at first was that the cabin would smell like gas every time I left it out. Figured that out. I had to take out the fuel fill line to the gas tank. Went through the inside the car, and it wasn't sealing correctly against the gas tank, and there was actually a little rust around the end of it. So I took it apart, cleaned off the rust, put it back together, and the problem was solved. But then I thought, well, there's rust there. Don't want rust in my fuel tank, so I put a new fuel filter in the line. Didn't quite understand how to purge the lines first, so I got fuel spilling all over myself in the driveway doing that. And at this point, I started watching more of the Car Passion channel because he has Miatas, he works on them, and I started following him because I want to learn more about this car. So that's where he steps in, where the Car Passion channel steps in quite a bit. Then the serpentine belts would squeak really loudly every time you start the car. I started driving for the first little bit till they warmed up, so I decided to replace those. And I decided, well, Chris Fix was the influence of this. I decided, well, let's replace the transmission fluid because that's probably something we need to do after I had, I think 114,000 miles on it when I bought it, something like that. So I replaced the transmission fluid. I thought, well, it'd probably take me a couple hours. It took me about 5 because I was still learning. I borrowed a jack from somebody. I started buying my own tools. My thought process behind it was whoever pay for parts and pay for tools, as long as it's under the amount I would pay for the service to be done, I benefit from this. Then I got real bold and I decided to take apart the engine, do the 100,000 mile maintenance on it myself, which includes the camshaft gasket, some other gaskets, some seals, the timing belt, the water pump, the pulleys, the coolant, of course, in the process. And I decided on top of that to replace the spark plug cables. It took me, I think, 2 days to do that, maybe 3. My best friend came out, he helped me break loose the crankshaft bolt, but it went really well. I took it all apart, put it back together, started waiting for the RTV blobs to dry, and I thought, I gotta test this thing out. Turn the key, and the car starts, and it sounds great. Start looking around the engine bay, looking for leaks. No leaks anywhere. It's great. I did forget to put the clamp back on to the return line to the radiator. So one day when I was driving it, that popped loose, and I lost half my coolant. But I happened to look at it after that drive and realized, oh no, I made a mistake. So I put that back on, put the clamp back on correctly. Filled up with coolant, it was fine. So that went well. Did a couple upgrades. I replaced the blinker lights and the brake lights with LEDs because they weren't bright enough. One winter I was having performance issues. I looked up online. Eric the car guy helped me out a lot with this. It was turned out just to be the spark plugs. One of them was not working right, so when I gave it too much gas, it would cough basically, and not ignite a cylinder. A little bit more recently, I decided to replace the speedometer sensor because what happened was that someone put in a 5-speed speedometer sensor in it instead of a 6-speed, and the gear ratios were off. They had different teeth. What the person did after to try to compensate for that was they changed the position of the needle to make it look like it was more correct speed than it actually was. But so I had to fix those two parts, fix the needle and fix the speedometer sensor, but that wasn't too big of a deal. So the front lower ball joints, or the lower control arm, I knew they were going bad. I knew at least the driver's side one was really going bad, so I decided to replace it. So I replaced it, and then decided, well, I need to get an alignment afterwards because this thing's way out of alignment now. So I take it over to the alignment shop, decide something doesn't feel right. It's just something in my chest, something in my spirit, just didn't feel right. So I decided to take it back home. Started taking it back home a different route than usual, actually. And I'm decelerating from 35 miles an hour to make a right turn onto another road, a busy road. And I'm on a non-busy road. Decelerating for 35 miles an hour, and suddenly the passenger side ball joint, lower ball joint, pops out, and the entire front right side of the car drops onto the wheel, the tire. So I slam on the brakes, all four wheels lock up and skid for maybe a yard or a yard and a half, something like that, maybe 2 yards. And I stop. And what happened? You know, the car started popping, groaning as it started resting more and more on the wheel, and I hopped out, jacked it up. I could actually pick up the wheel and bounce it around because that entire section of the car rests underneath that ball joint, and as soon as it popped out, the entire car fell down with it. Towed it back to the house. I knew what the problem was. I fixed the other side before, so I bought another ball joint, put it in the passenger side, got it aligned, everything was fine. So that was a long period of time for me not to have my car, and I was very happy to have it back. And then this past month, I was having issues where the car, it would take more to keep the car going or to get it to go. And I walked around the car and found one wheel way hotter than the rest of the wheel. So by this point I was able to do my own diagnosis without doing a whole bunch of research. And I came to the conclusion my caliper's locked up, which it was. We ended up replacing the calipers, the brake lines, the brake fluid, rotors, and pads for both the front and back because they needed to be done anyways. And that was a whole bunch of money I was not planning to spend right then, but I mean, I was saving up for brakes anyways, so that helped. And throughout this entire process of working on my own car, I started working on my family's cars, and my deal was, if you buy the parts, I will do the labor for free. And what I gain from this is experience. And I learned from it. For the most part, that's how it worked. So I worked on, 1998 Volkswagen Beetle. The first thing we had to do with that when we bought it was was brake pads and rotors. The rotors were so degraded that there was a lip all the way on the outside. I had to get a pry bar and pry the calipers to break off that lip to remove the calipers off the rotor. They were really bad. Replaced those, fine. Recently I had to take apart the entire front end. She got an incident and replaced the oil cooler in its gasket because there was a leak on the oil cooler gasket, which apparently is a common thing. Big oil leak. Then there was a radiator leak because she was in an incident, so we replaced the radiator. Replaced the driver's seatbelt because the driver's seatbelt locked up and it was damaged with the component. And I've also done quite a bit of work on the windows on that car, in and out, and eventually I did replace just the entire window internal piece unit. I've also worked on the Nissan Sentra 2013 Ford Escort. I don't remember what year that was, but I was continually having to do engine work on it, and eventually the head gasket blew, mixing oil and coolant into the piston chamber, and actually one of the pistons disconnected entirely from the crankshaft and it was completely blown. I took apart the engine. It wasn't worth putting a new engine for, so we got rid of that. And also did a little bit of steering work on that car. That car was replaced with a 2006 Mazda Tribute. Worked on a Chevy Impala, Toyota Celica. It's a 2002. The intake manifold had a big crack in it. The spark plugs were bad. It looks like oil was leaking through other parts into the chamber. The crankshaft gasket was cracking and oil was leaking out of the engine, leaking into the spark plug chambers really badly. So replaced all that. Actually, I didn't replace the intake manifold. I patched it with the JB Weld stuff because it was plastic. I learned that from Skyler Kilmer. So that was pretty cool. So it just worked. It patched it and it's solid now. Has an aftermarket exhaust, so it sounds really cool. I've also worked on a Hyundai Elantra 2013. My dad's Dodge Dart I've done a little bit of work on. And then finally, recently, my grandma passed down her 1982 Corvette Collector's Edition to my dad. And he's put me in charge of maintaining it and restoring it. Now, unfortunately, they don't have the money to put aside to start fixing up the car, and I really need money to start doing the small things right now. The car runs fine, it drives fine still, it has leaks, it has suspension issues, it has other issues, but it looks beautiful, it's in great condition, and it's special to my parents, it's special to my family, so I do plan on fixing that up and restoring it eventually, when they have the money. Probably not for a long time though. And that's one car I'd love to make a video series on. I absolutely hate editing videos, and I'm usually not very good at talking in videos either, because my mind starts editing itself, and I have to repeat myself, and I lose track of what I'm saying. I'm a better writer than talker. But again, to reiterate, Scotty Kilmer, Chris Fix, Eric the Car Guy, Wrenches, and the Car Passion channel. Very, very special shout out and thanks to you guys for just doing what you do and putting up with the video editing part of it. I don't know how you guys do that. I actually started following Eric the Car Guy with his Fairmont Project videos, I think. Those were the videos that actually got me into watching him and keeping up with him, I think. So it's pretty cool. So yeah. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my little rambling story. I mean, if you guys do, if any of these channels that I've mentioned do watch this video, sincerely thank you for helping me get started with this, and have a great, blessed day. Or night. Or evening, or maybe it's the morning. Could be noon. Who watches videos in the morning? Anyways, have a good one.